Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, episode 234. And man, I've been dating myself recently, right? What I mean by that, I've been taking myself out to eat certain places, been going out just to go out, just trying to be more social. Not because I have a difficulty being social, I just, I spend so much time at the house. It's damn near unhealthy at times, right? And only places I go literally is work, gym, home. And on the days I don't work out, it's, you know, go to work and go home. So with that being said, man, take yourself out, date yourself. This is what that episode's about. Like, if you want to book that trip, book that trip. If you want to, if you want to just if you want to go off and do something new, then do it. Yesterday I took myself to the beach, and I'm ashamed to say this. I don't remember the last time I went to the beach. You know, and it was nothing really crazy, man. Just stay there for a couple hours. Had me some food and shit, and that's about it. So yeah, with that being said, date yourself, take yourself out, treat yourself. Buy the sneakers. Tell that girl you like her, or tell that boy you like him. Like, don't be afraid to think that you have to live in some sort of box. Or if you got feelings for somebody, let it be known, man. I think a lot of us, most of the time, will sit there and suppress our feelings because we're too scared to do X, Y, and Z. We're too scared to be vulnerable. We're too scared to be, to open up. And in reality, that's what we have to do. I'm not saying that we're not gonna get burned. I'm not saying that bad shit's not gonna happen to us, because shit happens to people every day. People get into certain situations every day, right? It could be. Take for instance, this past weekend there was 3 accidents. Pretty much in the same time span of each other, right? And most of the time, it's people just speeding and not knowing how to drive. And that's what happens when you live on an island and there's 1,000,000+ people on one island. There's gonna be a lot of accidents, and a lot of it has to do with people not paying attention, and glued to their phones, and which I've never understood that. It's like you're out there driving a vehicle. Why you doing this? I've never understood that. I can understand fender benders and minor collisions and everything like that too. But I'm talking about the ones that just strictly just ain't paying attention. It's like I seen this one dash cam video where this guy was on the H1 westbound driving, and all of a sudden he swerves into the next lane, and he sideswipes this car. Actually, no, I take that back. When he does that, he rear ends his car, and he causes the car to flip out, or well, not the flip, but the turn. And the damage was so bad, it was like the guy's bumper flew off his car. And like, you go back and you look at the dash cam footage, and you're like, it's like how there was something else too. There was another accident too where the guy was going so fast that he flipped his truck several times, and I'm looking at that like, what is so important that you're going that fast, at that amount of speed, and you have to do that, like, and like, this is July 4th, like at 11 o'clock in the morning, And it's just crazy to me how people just like, there's so many accidents. But yeah, that's neither here or there. I think it's important to always take yourself out. You know, like I said, go to that restaurant, book that flight, tell that person you love them. You know, and understand that it takes courage to be, to do that. Like nobody wakes up one day and just like, has the courage to do that. I was once told that like I find it, sexy as fuck, that you're so confident. I'm like, it took years to get here, man. It's like it took not years, but it took decades to get here. And even with that being said, it's like, okay, how do we go about getting better? How do we go about, becoming better and building upon this particular set of skills that I have, right? And I was talking to somebody about therapy. And I said, don't get me wrong, therapy works, but therapy's not the answer for everybody, man. It's like people think, oh, just because you go to therapy that you're healed or that you no longer have issues. And it's like, and that's not the case. All therapy does is teach you how to have better coping mechanism skills. It teaches you how to hopefully deal with conflict better. It teaches you how to like spot the red flags and the green flags and everything else that comes with that, right? And when I say relationships, I just don't mean intimate ones. I mean platonic ones. I mean, regular friendships, whatever it is. Because there's that. And I think a lot of people, they just don't, they think, oh, well, I went to therapy, like I'm healed. I'm like, no, you're not. Because if you were healed, you wouldn't be in the same situations over and over and over again. If you were healed, it wouldn't be the same situation again and again. It's like I was telling one of my college friends, I was like, yo, it's like sometimes you have to get tired of having the same conversation, and you have to learn how to walk away, whether it's from a job, whether it's from a friendship or relationship, whatever it is. Like, you can't be having the same conversation multiple times because it's clear that the other person doesn't get it. And like, that's the case, man. It's like, I think a lot of times people will stay put in a situation and think, oh yeah, just because X, Y, and Z is happening, it's gonna be, whatever it is. And I said no. I was like, you can't sit there and think that everything in your head is gonna work out the way you want it to work out, right? Or like if you constantly coming up with different scenarios, how to control the situation and how to manipulate the situation to your outcome. Is like, number one, that's you trying to control the situation. That's you not living in the present. Because if you're trying to do that, if you're trying to control the situation, that means you don't have control over the present. So you're trying to control something that hasn't even happened yet. And I've always felt that was kind of weird when people try to do that. When like, it's one thing to brainstorm, it's another thing to sit there and come up with, solutions to problems that are not even problems. And it's draining. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and what he said is like, yeah, man, it's like the difference between men and women is like, a lot of the times women will, whether unconsciously or consciously know, or come up, not know, but either unconsciously or consciously come up with scenarios in their head, and they'll run with it, and there's nothing, that we can do to stop them from spiraling out. Whether it's their insecurities, whether it's the baggage, and and he told me something that, which I didn't think about it this way, but when he said, he's like, yeah, man, he's like, it's like when a kid burns his hand on the stove, right? I was like, yeah, what about it? He's like, yeah, like the kid is, the kid is told, hey, don't put your hand there, it's gonna be hot, this and this and that. Don't put your hand there, it's gonna be hot. And the kid puts his hand on that, his or her hand on that stove, and burns their hand for a little bit, right? And then he goes, but the difference is people carry that negative connotation with them. And I kind of sat in my car, and I'm like, that makes sense, because it does. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, it makes sense, And so we started talking about that, and he said, yeah, man. And then he said, another thing too is like, people think that they get into a relationship just to find happiness. And he's like, bro, it's not our job to make our ladies happy. He's like, it's our job to find happiness 100% of the time for ourselves. Now, if we find happiness with somebody else along the way, great. But it's never our job to create happiness for somebody else, because I've always believed if your happiness comes from external sources, you'll never be eternally happy. And that's what I've been seeing with a lot of people. Like, instead of them just trying to live in the moment, whatever it is, they just don't they don't find that internal happiness, right? With me, it's lifting weights, it's making beats, it's producing music, it's releasing music, it's it used to be bodybuilding shows. It's no longer competitive bodybuilding, but you have to find that internal happiness. And if you don't find that internal happiness, I don't care what you do, I don't care where you go, you're never gonna find that in an external place. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that. They don't realize, like, damn, okay, X, Y, and Z is happening. Bet. How do we go about, making sure that our happiness, our cup for happiness is always full? And sometimes that's, not responding to text messages, or sometimes that's not picking up the phone, or sometimes that's, that's cutting the conversation short, because it's like, a lot of the times people will call you just to bitch about their day, and they'll never once ask you how you doing. Take note of that, man. People will love to complain about their issues, but never come up with solutions. And so when you're dealing with things like that, people like that, and like what my buddy was telling me yesterday, he was like, yeah, man, he's like, my goal in my life is to find ultimate happiness. Now, whether if that's with my girl, great. If that's not with my girl, then great. He's like, because at the end of the day, it's my job to make sure I'm happy regardless. And when he broke it down like that, it made sense. Because it's like, you don't sit there and think about that in that context, right? And when that particular thing happened, and it's something that you can control with, which is your emotions and your feelings and everything too. Another thing I always tell people is like, just because it's a feeling doesn't mean it's factual. Just because it's a feeling doesn't mean that it's, that it's gonna be something that's that's actually rooted in facts. Because you can feel a certain way. It's like, take for instance, it's like this is the whole different topic. But what I'm about to say is like, okay, when people say LeBron's better than Kobe, that's your feeling, but facts don't back it up. Because you can just look at the final record. You know, you can look at the fact that just look at the stats overall. You know, and so like a lot of people will sit there and think their feelings are facts and they're not, and like they'll be like, "What you mean X, Y, and Z, yada yada yada." I'm like, no, it's like just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that it makes it okay. It doesn't mean that it's the end all be all type of thing, right? And I think that's where a lot of people get it fucked up at, because they will sit there and create situations or problems where there are no problems. And I think a lot of times it's like because people aren't externally, internally happy, they look for that shit externally, and it's like whether it's, strip club, alcohol, whatever, prostitutes, whatever it is, right? I'm not saying that you can't indulge in those things, because you can, but what I'm saying is that if you're constantly doing those things week after week, it's like guys who are obsessed with porn, right? Like after a while, it was like, bro, it was like there's something psychologically missing in your life that you're trying to fill it with that dopamine void, right? You're trying to fill that, and it doesn't work. But yeah, like I was saying in the beginning, go off and go date yourself, and make mistakes. You're never too old to learn. You're never too old to understand how to do things better, and to understand how to make certain situations better. And just because one relationship doesn't work out, for whatever plethora of reasons, it doesn't mean that nothing's ever going to work out. It just means for that particular situation with that particular person, it just wasn't meant to be. And like, while it sucks, because it does suck, just thank them for the time. Thank them for the time, and understand that it's, that it's okay. Understand that that the lessons were important, and the lessons were needed, because I think everybody comes into your life to teach you many different things, no matter what it is, big, small, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? And I think that's important, to not just make time for yourself, but to make time for other people who deem you important. No matter how busy you are, no matter how busy you are, make time for yourself, make time for your people, pick up the phone and call people, have conversations with them, link up with them, and just understand that, that everything happens for a reason, right? And it's not something that's good or bad or whatever it is. It's just a thing. And that's what it is, man. I think a lot of people just don't do that. They just go through life thinking that things gonna be different just because it's a brand new day, brand new year, brand new month. And I'm like, nah, if you still out there doing the same thing, fucking with the same people, you can't complain when you get the same results. And that's where I'm at, man. Elevate your circle, evaluate your circle, and cut off the people that you have to cut off. Because a lot of the times it's just not worth it. Yeah. All right, y'all. Hope y'all keeping the four P's. This is 20 minutes of your life that y'all won't get back. Hope, like I said, hope you keeping the 4 P's. Private play, positive pushing. I'll see y'all next week. I love y'all. Ghost, like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. All right, y'all. Peace.